Hello and welcome to Ginger Prints. Now today I wanted to make something a little bit festive as it's coming up to Christmas, and I wanted to get out there and I wanted to make something that I could actually sort of decorate my house with, decorate my tree with, something that was a little bit different that you don't really see that often in the shops. So I wanted to make a Christmas decoration that I can hang from my tree, and I wanted to go a little bit outside the box, make something a little bit different, and also make it a little bit more interactable. So if you do have kids and things like that, then you can sort of make this for your kids and it will give them something to sort of play with and sort of engage with as well. So what I've gone for is a simple Christmas tree design. I'd put a lot of thought into this. I wanted to actually make it like a little bit more of a traditional Christmas tree. I wanted to put like some jagged edges to sort of resemble branches and things like that. But just looking at the mechanics of it, the size that I wanted to make this, I just wouldn't be able to make it big enough basically to actually allow it to revolve and move around how I wanted it to. Otherwise it would have been absolutely huge and it would have looked absolutely ridiculous. So I've gone for something a little bit more simple, but you can still make out what it is. And I still wanted that feature of the actual tree to be able to sort of swivel around on the inside. So it was quite time consuming, it took quite a long time to actually design this, just because as you can see it's quite meticulous. I wanted all the rings to be exactly the same size, so I couldn't really copy and paste one section, shrink it down, because it would shrink the size of that inner ring basically. So all I'm doing is to sort of save time and space and plastic. I'm making like a really small sort of 0.5mm gap in between each of these rings. One, just because it's going to make it a little bit more structurally sound when I'm printing it, and it's just going to make it a little bit easier to sort of cut apart and stuff like that. So here you can see I think I finished up with 4 rings in total. I could have done an even smaller one in the middle, but I thought it'd just sort of make it a little bit too complicated, a bit too much there, so I sort of simplified it down. So here you can see I've sort of made it a bit bigger. I believe I've made this maybe 5 or 6 mil high. I didn't want it to be too big. I wanted it to be sort of quite small and delicate, so it looked quite nice. So you can see I've made a hole all the way through all them layers, and that's going to be for a spindle it's going to go through, and that's just going to allow the whole thing to sort of rotate around. So here you can see I've got the base of the Christmas tree design. I've hollowed that as well so the spindle can go inside of that. Now all I'm doing is I'm designing the actual spindle that's going to go through the entire thing. I want it to go into the base slightly. That will be glued in place to sort of make it structurally sound, and I do want to put a star on the top of this as well, so I've just made that spindle a little bit taller just so it can accommodate this star going on the top. And it's a really simple design. I've not gone too mad with it, making everything the same thickness. That spindle I've actually made slightly smaller than the hole, because when it does print, obviously it is going to be slightly bigger than what it is, so I've just allowed for those tolerances. And here you can see I'm just making the hole in the star here for that spindle to go into. I didn't change my settings, so rather than keeping the original for some reason, I had it on keep everything. So I finally sorted that, and that is going to be the actual layout of it. I really like this design. It's nice and simple, it's nice and elegant, and I think it's just going to look absolutely brilliant. And I've got a few ideas just to sort of make it stand out a little bit more, just to make it that little bit nicer. Just making the line tie at the top there as well, so you can hang it off the tree with a little piece of cord. So this is the slicer AstroPrint. This is what I use. For this I didn't really change much, to be honest. The quality of the shell and the infill I left the same. If you watch my videos before, you know I like to print my PLA quite high. I sort of range from 230 to 235, just because I feel that you get better adhesion with those layers. And I always save my build plate quite high as well, just because this has got some pointy edges. I don't want those peeling up. But I am going to put a build plate adhesion on this. I'm going to put I think it's a 4mm brim on this, just to make sure I do get that adhesion to the plate, because you can see the sharp corners of this Christmas tree, when that's printing, that will start to peel up, and as the printer builds up and up and up, it just skews that corner a bit, so it doesn't look great. So once this is sliced, I don't think this took too long. I think this was literally just over 2 hours. Yeah, just over 2 hours to print, so it was nice and quick. I did speed up the printer a little bit more as well, just because I was a little bit impatient and I wanted to see how it would turn out. So as I go down the layers, you can see that spindle goes right through the middle of the tree, and that's what's going to allow all them individual rings to actually spin round. You can see in the base as well, there's that slot and in the star, so everything should connect perfectly. And I've actually tried printing that spindle on the side just to see how it turns out, just because it is quite tall, it's very thin. I didn't want to sort of print it up on its end, just because I don't think it would have turned out that well. So here you can see the printer does an absolutely brilliant job of it. Even though I did speed the printer up by an extra 25%, the quality of the printing still came out absolutely spot on. Even the small 0.5mm gaps in between each of those rings were still there and visible, as you're going to see. And even the spindle came out perfectly. It's a little bit flat on one side, but that's not a problem. I can just sand that down just to make that fit a little bit better. So once I got all the edging off, I just took my craft knife, went around all the edges, and I just sort of cleaned up the edges a little bit more. Now this is actually quite a blunt knife, and I like to use blunter knives when I'm doing this, just because I find they don't bite in as deep to the plastic. So if you have got them little edge pieces on the side, a blunt knife will take them off without actually cutting into the plastic itself. Then you saw there I was just scoring down those sides, and then that actually separated all the layers apart. Now after separating everything, I got the spindle. You can see here it's got quite a thick base on it from where it was connected to the build plate, but I just took my craft knife over it, took off those edges, and I used a bit of sandpaper just to sort of thin that down. And then I went over the star and the actual Christmas tree base as well, and just cleaned up all them edges. Now after putting it all together and looking at how the mechanics of it are going to work, I realised the tops of the trees were a little bit too high and they wouldn't spin round. So all I did was on the inner 3 rings, I just cut off the tips there, as you can see, and that just allows them to spin a little bit easier rather than getting caught. And you can see they all fit together. The tree's going to go at the top, base goes at the bottom, and then that spindle there is going to go all the way through the middle and connect everything. Now I did want to make a couple of different colours, so I printed out another one in orange. I actually did 2 of the red ones just because I wanted a pure red one just to see how it would look. And I thought if I did 2 different colours, then I could interchange all the rings and all the different parts, and then that way it will just give it a little bit of a nicer look, stand out a little bit more, sort of a little bit more eye-catching. And it just, I think they look absolutely brilliant. Unfortunately I've only got these colours at the minute. I do have a few other colours, but they're not very Christmassy, so I will be ordering some more plastic just so I can start doing other bits. But here you can see the hole that I made. This spindle fits in absolutely perfectly. Really happy with the fit. I feel like I'm really dialing in my design techniques now, so everything's starting to sort of come together. The more you practice, the more you get used to something, the better it's going to be, basically. And I am completely self-taught when doing all this. It's just through watching a few videos on YouTube and basically going around and testing it for myself, basically, and finding out what works for me. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to use some Gorilla Glue, because I find that glue works really well with this plastic, and I'm actually going to glue the base and the star in. And what that's going to do is that's going to lock all those rings into place so it can't come apart, basically, and it's just going to be a nice secure bond. And they'll both turn at the same angle as well, so they look a little bit more natural. And I did exactly the same for the other tree, put it all together with a spindle in, star on top, base on the bottom, glued them in. So this is the pure red one, and these are the 2 of the different layers, and you can see it spins around completely freely. So that's the end of the build. I hope you've enjoyed it. If there's something you want to see me print, then drop it down in the comments section below. Anything you can think of, as long as I can fit on my printer, I'll print it and post it. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next design.